welcome to our first Lunch and Learn session of 2015. Happy New Year. So the Lunch and Learn series is sponsored by A.T. Still University's Department of Information Technology and Services. I am Brian Krusniak and I get to be the host. Thanks for joining us once again for the show that shares information, tips, techniques, and trivia about what's going on with technology at ATSU. Once again, we have some really good material to share in this episode. Our break to educate for this week discusses Data Privacy Day, and we've included some helpful thoughts and tips for protecting your personal information and privacy. We also have a couple of excellent tech tips. One for our Microsoft users is a tip from Beth Thompson to help you save time on formatting. And the second is for our iPad users, and that one's from Danny Fladhammer, who explains a less frequently but potentially powerful tool called Assistive Touch. And then our main topic for today revolves around the Internet of Things, and more specifically around the Internet of Medical Things. But before I introduce our distinguished guest on the topic, I want to remind everyone that we have encouraged you to participate in the show between bites of your sandwich by typing into the live stream chat window your questions or comments. It's really easy, and it really adds to the learning part of the Lunch and Learn session. So please participate and pass along your thoughts, comments and questions as well. And then we'll gather those up throughout the session, and we'll pass them along for discussion toward the end. So let's go ahead and get started. Our guest for today is Dr. Fred Schwartz. Dr. Schwartz is the Associate Dean for Clinical Education and Services at SOMA, A.T. Still University's School of Osteopathic Medicine in Arizona. And Dr. Schwartz is involved in several interesting projects, but the one that he's going to discuss with us today is the Internet of Medical Things, what it is and how it will affect both healthcare and the ways in which we prepare our students to practice. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Dr. Fred Schwartz.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm very much aware of how wonderful it is that we have an ITS department here that goes beyond the technical to the educational and does so much to help us with the challenges that we're going to be facing in the educational process of the future. So let's talk about the Internet of Medical Things. Next slide, Brian.
I'm going to go to full screen.
Okay, here he comes.
There we go.
Okay, hit it again.
All right.
Perfect. No financial conflicts of interest, and we managed to get through this preparation without injuring any frogs. We'll talk about frogs in just a minute. Brian, the next slide, please. So what I want to do today is to convince you that we are experiencing a major change, and that to keep our programs relevant and innovative, and as you know, innovation is one of our board objectives for this year, we need to look hard at how we innovate in response to what's going on in the Internet of Medical Things. Brian, the next slide, please. So what do we mean by the Internet of Things? Well, ever since the University of Pennsylvania put together ENIAC, the first electronic computer in the 1940s, and it was designed to give people data that they could then take to another place and launch their bombs and artillery and so on in World War II. They put that together. It couldn't store a program, and it only put out numbers, and then somebody had to take those numbers and do something else with them. That became control of information, and the big advance was that we actually were able to give it memory and ask it to do different things. What's changed is now we're beginning to see an internet that controls things as opposed to just information. And if you go on Amazon or you open your email or you look at the spam you'll get all kinds of people trying to sell you things that will control the temperature in your house, And as you know, you can pick up your iPhone and you can control the temperature in your house with Nest. You can open your garage door. You can look inside and outside your garage. You can start your car. And if you're lost, it can tell you where your car is and guide you to do it. And it can tell you whether the tank is full. And very importantly, as we begin to look at the medical applications, it can make a service appointment. Not much difference between making a service appointment for your car or your body. And if you call a cab with your Uber app, it'll tell you where the cab is and kind of guide you and the cab driver to the same place. So that's how the Internet of Things is beginning to change the way in which we function. So as we move from control of information to control of things, what does that imply for us as leaders in education? Well, Peter Senge, the author of The Fifth Discipline and a very astute observer of the way in which organizations function, says that there are 7 organizational learning disabilities that we always have to be concerned about. I am my position. Nah. The enemy is out there. The illusion of taking charge. Fixation on events. Skip number 5 for a minute. The delusion that we only need to learn from experience, and the myth of the management team. The one I want to focus on is the parable of the boiled frog. Hit enter again. So, well, now I'll go back and make it flip. No? All right, we'll go to the next one. So anyway, what is the boiled frog syndrome? The idea is that if you have a pot of boiling water and you drop a frog into the water, the frog's going to say, boy, that's hot, and hop out. But if you put a frog in water and slowly raise the temperature, even beyond the temperature where it would have hopped out before, if you get there slowly and slowly raise that temperature, the frog is going to sit there and kind of not even notice the heat until you actually reach even boiling temperature. That is the boiling frog syndrome, and that allegory would be that we have this change occurring around us, and yet we aren't necessarily aware of how significant that change can be until we're in the hot water of not being able to apply our educational process to what's going on in the world that our students have to practice in. So with that as introduction, Brian, we're going to stop here for you to insert some information, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, great, thanks. I think that's a good place to take a break. And, you know, kind of with the parable, Dr. Schwartz has set the stage for how the Internet of Things is slowly starting to turn up the heat in healthcare. So when we come back, we'll have him give us some examples and help us think through what it means for us as an educational institution. But first, what we want to do is we want to get a great Microsoft tip from Beth Thompson.
One of my favorite features is Format Painter. This feature is available in most Microsoft software. This feature allows you to copy formats, fonts, spacing, colors, number formats, and all other formatting features without copying the text. To begin, click on a section of text that you want to copy the formatting from. Then, click on the Format Painter icon on the toolbar. Select all the text where you want to paste the formatting. Clicking once on the Format Painter will allow you to paste one time. To paste multiple times, click on a section of text that you want to copy the formatting from. Then, double-click on the Format Painter icon on the toolbar. Click on each area where you want to paste the formatting. To turn off the Format Painter, either click on the Format Painter icon or hit the Escape key on your keyboard. Please email me if you have any questions, want further instructions, or if you have suggestions for further episodes.
All right, great. Thanks, Beth. You're my hero for the week. I didn't know that you could double click on the format and actually use that multiple times, so great tip. We're back with Dr. Fred Schwartz, and we're hearing about some major changes that are upon us because of rapidly changing technology, and particularly those changes within healthcare. So just a reminder that you can share your thoughts and questions for Dr. Schwartz in the live stream chat. Please add your questions in there, and we'll take them as part of the discussion a little bit later. But at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Schwartz and let him help us better understand the Internet of Medical Things and what we might do as an institution about these coming changes. Dr. Schwartz?
Okay, next slide, please. So we know for some time that we've had apps that tell you stuff, and our library, Mike Cronenfeld and the crew have done a fabulous job of making it portable, putting it in front of us, Medscape, the library search, up-to-date, Wikipedia. No big deal that you have apps that will tell you stuff. And for a generation, we've taught students in all of our disciplines how to approach evidence-based assessment, critical assessment, thought processes to make sure that whether it's a new drug or a new process or new information about epidemiology, we have a language and a behavior that allows us to assess that stuff and know how to apply it in the real world. Now people are getting apps that tell them stuff about themselves as opposed to about facts on the outside. So let's record how many steps you take, your exercise, how many calories you expended, pulse, the distance traveled, the whole business, daily weight. Your scale can be wired to chart your weight on the iPhone or the Android. How many times you turned over during your sleep, how much sun exposure you got. This is a huge industry. And if you look at the recent technical exposition that occurred, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, the prediction is that this is a billion-dollar industry all by itself, not only in the area of exercise, but in the area of other things in health. The toilet bowls that actually tell you whether they found any blood when they flush, all kinds of things that are changing. The other thing is that now these apps are able to tell somebody else about you. So all the stuff about you that just got accumulated can be sent to your healthcare provider and automatically entered into the medical record. Is that information going to be accessible to your insurance company? Should it be accessible to your insurance company? For example, not only can it document how you slept, but also where you slept. As a matter of fact, Verizon recently has put in a super cookie that you can't get out, and that if your phone's on, it'll tell you where you are, even if maybe you don't want somebody to know where you are. Next slide, Brian. So what's changed in the Internet of Medical Things is that we now have applications that do stuff in the physical world with the information that they collect. 49 patients, Boston, this year, iPhone 4S, a glucagon pump, and an insulin pump. And the iPhone 4S acts as the brain for the artificial pancreas that's created by the glucagon pump and the insulin pump. And not only does it take care of the blood sugar, but if it can't take care of the blood sugar and it runs into trouble, it calls for help. It calls the ER, it could send an ambulance because it's still an iPhone. So this is a major change, and it's indicative of what we're going to be seeing as we move forward. Next slide, Brian. So some of the apps that make decisions for and about you include Scanadu, where you can touch a small monitor to your forehead, get temp and pulse and blood pressure and heart rate and rhythm and all that stuff, or a cell scope that actually can look in the ear and send an image to your doc. So next slide, Brian. Currently in testing and development and anticipated to be available this year is a device to analyze that pediatric rash using your phone camera and actually decide upon a care plan, tell you whether to go to the ER or stay home. Something to monitor the pacemaker and adjust the rate and rhythm as opposed to just report on it. A personal health coach for chronic conditions that will ask questions and decide when you need to get help, and a smartwatch that can decide when to change the amount of medication you're taking for your tremors. All of these things are in development right now, will be available theoretically, within the next year. Now, you never know when something actually moves from what we call vaporware to reality, but this stuff is coming and the onslaught is going to be tremendous. Next slide, Brian. So it's all good, right? I mean, these are interesting, helpful devices. What's the problem? Well, most of the stuff that we're talking about, the FDA doesn't regulate. The FDA has taken a position that they're going to regulate the ones that attach to a regulated device. So now I can take my iPhone, I can walk into the hospital, and I can actually watch all the ICU monitors for all of the patients that I have in the hospital on my phone. That's going to be regulated because the ICU monitor is a regulated device. But for most of the other stuff, the things we've talked about, the FDA has taken a hands-off kind of, we're not going to enforce much position on this stuff other than for certain very high-risk items. So FDA regulation is being pretty much ignored by industry, and there's been virtually no enforcement related to applications. So what about this low, medium, and high risk? Let's look at the next slide. Okay, so what we've got is low risk. You put a Band-Aid on a wound. FDA doesn't get involved. Number two, medium risk. You have a smart bandage, and the smart bandage actually takes wound temperature and it's available now, as an indicator of whether or not infection is beginning in the wound. FDA says that is moderate risk and they are not taking an enforcement position. Class 3 is the smart bandage that not only takes the temperature of the wound, but also pumps out some antibiotic of a medication for the wound if, in fact, the temperature begins to go up. That device, the FDA is considering whether or not they're going to regulate that device. Meanwhile, we have some problems in terms of our ability to educate. Next slide, please. So the thesis here is that although we've trained our students to assess medications, to evaluate physical treatments, to analyze the literature, not a lot of literature has been created around these devices, and we don't have experts on board who can today teach evidence-based assessment skills for this onslaught of devices, of things that are going to plug in and attach to and read on and transmit information, maybe correctly, maybe incorrectly, maybe tell somebody to stay home when they really should have gone to the ER, or maybe the reverse. So we don't have a clue about the reliability, the reproducibility, the effectiveness, or the appropriateness of the medical apps that are being attached to increasing numbers to our patients. And from here, that looks like a major risk that we're going to have to do something about. Next slide, Brian. So if a new medication came on the market, we could assess the phase 3 trials and look at the research and the risks and benefits. But we need the training as faculty to be able to teach appropriate skills around evaluation and use. And this is really a place where we can work together and an opportunity for interprofessional education. I would put it to you that among our various resources, audiology probably has the greatest edge here, because they've been assessing feedback-related interactive equipment for a very long time, probably much longer than anybody else. And at our 2 medical schools, our OPP faculty are very skilled at understanding biofeedback loops, recording physiologic change, and they too have done research in this area. But I think we need to be a little bit more intentional about it. So, next slide. If we decide that this change is indeed coming and that it will be significant, we have to make innovative changes in our curricular so that our trainees can lead the way, because that's who we are, and we really want to be sure that we're taking care of people in an appropriate way. So what should we do? Well, in order to assure that the institution is competent to evaluate and develop portable, application-based, heuristic, self-learning, interventional technology, we need to decide what it is we need to teach, decide how we're going to teach it, because this probably is not presentation-based. This is probably hands-on, play with the equipment, learn what the equipment can do the studies if they're not done about things like reliability and accuracy, and then decide what our criteria are for how we know we'll have succeeded in teaching it. So that's the story, that's the message. This stuff is happening rapidly in one sense, but kind of slowly and insidiously in terms of the absence of regulation in another sense, which leads to the kind of boiling water analogy. And 2, 3, 4 years out in the future, our students being out there without us having given them the guidance and the preparation that they need to really do an excellent job of helping the folks that they're responsible for advising them and assisting them in interpreting the data. So in general, we got to decide whether it's time to get out of the water and get moving on this or not. So, Brian, that's the story.
Excellent, excellent. Really interesting. I mean, for me, from a technology standpoint, but also just from a societal standpoint, the impact that these things are going to have on our lives. We do have some questions that have come in, and I encourage people to keep them coming. We'd really like to get into a good discussion about just what type of curriculum change is necessary to deal with these kinds of changes and new technologies. So we'll do that right after this when we get back from our second tip of the day. This one's on using assistive touch on the iPad, and we'll be right back.
All right, welcome back for another iOS tip of the day. Today we're going to go over a cool little interesting add-on to the iPad known as Assistant Touch. Now this is really awesome in case some of your buttons don't work or your home button isn't functioning well. You can still do everything on the iPad via touchscreen. So I'm going to show you a little bit of Assistant Touch is this guy right here. So you can see I have all sorts of different options. I can choose from all sorts of things on what to do. And what's nice is I don't have to use the home button or any of the buttons on the iPad. So I'm just going to click out to close it out. And how we get this guy to show up, it's very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to go under Settings, and we're going to go under General, Accessibility, and we're going to scroll to the very bottom. And you'll see it here under Physical Motor. And what we want to choose, you'll see Assistive Touch. I currently have mine on, but if you have it off, you'll notice it's in the off status. But go ahead and click it on, and it'll show up wherever. Usually it'll show up in the corners, but I have mine showing up on the near the home button. And this is a really new very interesting touch feature, and you can create gestures and tap to swipe and do certain things. But yep, that is assistive touch. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of fun to play with. Once again, how you get there is settings, general, accessibility, scroll to the very bottom, assistive touch, and just turn it on. Thank you very much for tuning in to iOS Tip of the Day. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Danny, for that tip. So we're back with your questions for Dr. Fred Schwartz regarding the Internet of Medical Things. And so I guess the first question, if I might, Dr. Schwartz, is kind of what are some of your thoughts on what we need to do as an institution to kind of prepare curriculum, to prepare students for these types of changes?
I think the first thing we need to do is to be sure that we're monitoring and understanding the applications as they begin to be rolled out. And then to be very conscious, as we are in other areas, to develop interdisciplinary training scenarios that allow us to get practical application, not for what can go right, but for what can go wrong. So, for example, inside our virtual community health center, which, by the way, is envision.atsu.edu, inside our virtual community health center, we're looking at a number of cases where the monitoring technology or the reporting technology is used, and maybe it causes a delay, or it doesn't necessarily report comprehensively, or it doesn't take into account all the social determinants of health that, as we know, are more responsible for outcome often than the pure medical facts, and so can actually create additional complication, because we've not yet run into anything in medicine that works well all the time. And so we need to be able to analyze that. In addition to that, we also need to look at how these devices can, when they work well, increase the efficiency of communication and allow us to provide medical care, health care in general, support at a distance, and whether or not some of the barriers to quality, access, and cost can in fact be adjusted by the ability to use wisely these applications. So what have we got out there? How do we evaluate it? And how do we use it? Has to turn into curricular items that we validate not just by presentation or reading, but by participatory activity on the part of the trainees. Besides which, that'll give our IT folks a lot of really neat stuff to play with.
Yeah, I think that's great from our standpoint, and I think it makes sense from a research standpoint to be able to provide help with researching some of these tools. One of the questions that came in is somewhat related, but it's really more from the educational side. We're already in a situation where the curriculum is overcrowded. So how do we add components for the Internet of Medical Things into something that's really already so overwhelming?
You know, if we ever figure out what we really need to teach to achieve competence, we'll be way ahead of the game. And that discussion about shaving down what's already there and what needs to be added, in my experience in medical education, the what needs to be added part is always much easier than the what could be cut out or changed. But the hope comes from the fact that we're moving to milestones and competence in the way in which we design educational systems and interventions. And in so doing, maybe we'll be able to begin to figure out what are the things that we don't need to spend as much time on. And can we make learning more efficient in order to be able to adhere to objectives. So if we're truly objective vision driven, we can begin to let some things go. And then secondly, if we're really innovative in terms of the way in which we present, and we do much less of what, by the way, we're doing right now, which is lecture format presentation, and for our trainees, more participatory, hands-on, application-driven, simulation-driven kinds of education, we should be able to fold this stuff in a highly applicable and efficient way. Change is never easy. It's not always fun, but we have to look at what's necessary in order to achieve the outcome of better care, better experience of care, and reasonable cost of care. And this stuff is inevitably a big part of that.
Yeah, and I don't think it all has to be part of the curriculum either. I think, simulation offers us an opportunity to provide kind of optional components for people to take advantage of. And really, when you're starting to talk about the Internet of Medical Things, simulation lends itself to that really well.
Indeed, and remember, we're on both the undergraduate and the graduate level in healthcare education, so we have a number of different places and opportunities for appropriateness for this material.
Good. Another question that's coming in, are there any modules already out there on this type of topic, or would we really be starting from scratch?
There are places where the devices are part of modules. And as I said, we're doing that already with our virtual community health center. What my literature search showed me was that where we're deficient is in sitting down and looking at the analytics of how these things work and looking as a class at these applications and what we need to do to be prepared to deal with these applications and the incredible change that's going to come. So it's what's missing educationally is kind of the focus. And whether or not, we focus on social determinants of health at ATSU, this is another area where I believe we have an obligation to focus in terms of the future. And that's the difference, Brian. It's not that nobody talks about smart monitors or that nobody talks about the use of home devices. It's that nobody talks about the evaluative approach to deciding whether you use a smart monitor or a home device in a circumstance.
Sure. So, you mentioned analytics, and kind of when you start talking about the Internet of Things, this whole concept of big data starts to come into the conversation.
Indeed.
And our next segment is on data privacy and personal information. What are some of your thoughts with where that's going to go with these devices really getting into people's personal information and how willing people will be to share it and how available it will be to clinicians to actually use that data?
The data accumulation, the number of data points, taking a good history is something we train people to do. But now, in addition to that, it's also providing a bucket inside your electronic health record for all of this other kind of information to flow in. And then the big data question is it there and I know it's there because I've actually designed parameters to tell me? Have we done the research to know that if you measure somebody's sleep hygiene night after night over a large population, that the number of times people turn over can be an indicator of restless leg syndrome and circulatory problems or not? How do I parse that data? There's another whole wonderful field of research that's going to come from these patient-driven applications as the data becomes centralized, indexed, and stored. And then the whole ethical kind of questions about privacy and aggregation and economic assessments. It's like the genome question that you're going to be talking about at another meeting. When you know too much, Do you decide when somebody's 7 that they'll never get life insurance because of the genome structure that they happen to have carried going forward? These are questions that become societal questions that need to be dealt with and answered. And hopefully our folks, if we train them well and deal with these human factors, can be part of that solution.
Good. I think we have time maybe for just one more question. And this one deals a little bit more with the future, so you're really projecting out there. But how do you think these things will affect the healthcare industry itself? I mean, they're certain to make a big change, but how do you see structural changes being affected by the Internet of Things? Or do you?
Oh, absolutely. And look what we're up against. We are 20,000 providers short by 2020 at the most conservative estimates right now. And yet we have caps on postdoctoral education on the medical side. We have training needs for nurse practitioners and PAs that we don't have the capacity to meet. We have all of the disciplines fighting to have everybody work at the top of their licenses and also to train everybody else to help everybody else work at the top of their licenses to try and deal with the social justice that is occurring as everybody gets access to healthcare. So we need the efficiencies that are going to result from some of these devices properly applied. We need that desperately. We need to be able to not see somebody 4 times a year for their essential hypertension if it's going well, and we have enough monitoring out there to be sure that it's going well, and we can see them less often. Our health center partners, for example, right now do 80 million visits a year on 20 million patients, and that with the ACA is likely to go to 120 million visits on 29 or 30 million patients in the next half a decade. How do we have the capacity to do that? Only by doing a better job with the things that we've talked about today as weapons in that process of improving the care that we provide, and yet being able to maintain that osteopathic touch that's the core of the way in which we function. And that's another whole discussion about what happens as these devices distance us from the direct aspects of patient care. Another thing we need to spend some time talking and thinking about.
Excellent. It's a great conversation. Thanks so much for being here and talking with us about it. And it really transitions well, as I kind of mentioned, into another aspect of all of these changes coming in technology, and that's protecting your personal data and your individual privacy. And so that's the topic of today's Break to Educate. In October, we have Cybersecurity Month, and so we do lots of education around cybersecurity. But in February, there's a national focus on data privacy, related but a little bit different. So let's go now to some information that helps people understand just what data privacy is and why it's important.
Sponsored by the National Cybersecurity Alliance, Data Privacy Day is held every January 28th as an international celebration designed to promote awareness about privacy. ATSU has joined other schools and businesses as a Data Privacy Day champion. Being a Data Privacy Day champion is a way for ATSU to officially show support for Data Privacy Day and our commitment to respecting privacy, safeguarding data, and enabling trust. These are just a few of the organizations that are also Data Security Day champions. And yet more champions. And here we are. See us by the red star? The goals of Data Privacy Day are raise awareness and educate consumers to better understand how their personal information may be collected and the benefits and risks of sharing personal data. Empower consumers to express their expectations for the use, protection, and management of their personal data. Inspire consumers through concrete, simple, and actionable tips to more actively manage their online lives. Encourage and motivate consumers to consider the privacy implications of their online actions for themselves and others. Encourage businesses to be data stewards by being open and honest about how they collect, use, and share personal information, and clearly communicating any available privacy and security controls. Be aware that when you share a post, picture, or video online, you may also be revealing information about others. Be thoughtful when and how you share information about others. For instance, posting your status on Facebook and including a friend's name can open both of you up to providing too much information. Telling the world that you are sitting at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport isn't a good idea. Don't share your birthday, age, or place of birth. This information could be useful to identity thieves and to data mining companies. A research study by Carnegie Mellon University found that Social Security numbers can be predicted based on publicly available information, including your birthday, age, and place of birth. Don't publicize vacation plans, especially the dates that you'll be traveling. Burglars can use this information to rob your house while you're out of town. Don't post pictures of children where their school name or home address can be seen. What you post can last a lifetime. Before posting online, think about how it might be perceived now and in the future, and who might see it. Yes, and especially Mom. Set your privacy settings to the maximum level on social networks. By doing so, you have more control over who can and cannot post on your wall or follow you. You'll have more control over whether or not outsiders can access your personal information. If you are not sure how to set your privacy and security, give the help desk a call. Even if you have carefully guarded your presence, please give the same courtesy to your friends. Personal information is like money. Value it. Protect it. Be wary of communications that implore you to act immediately, or offer something that sounds too good to be true, or ask for personal information. To quote Nancy Reagan on a different subject, just say no. This is a lot of information to absorb in a short amount of time, so feel free to call the help desk if you have questions. If you take nothing else away from this, please be careful and think before you click.
All right, so some good information there, and it's really hard for us to overstate the importance of, cybersecurity and taking it seriously, not only at work but at home as well. So next, we've got some quick videos that are provided to us by the Stay Safe Online organization, and that's part of the National Cybersecurity Alliance. So let's go to those and give you some more information.
Hold it! Huh? Before you move a finger, stop, think, connect.
Stop. Before you click on a link, open an attachment, or reveal personal information online.
Think. Do all of my devices have active and up-to-date security settings?
Then connect, knowing you're helping make the web safer for you
and for everyone. Make Stop, Think, Connect part of your daily online routine.
All hands on deck. What's up? I want to point out 3 tips for using the home computer more safely. Point away.
First, stop. Make sure your software is up to date and that you've password protected your computer's login and Wi-Fi connection.
Next, think before visiting a site, opening attachments, or clicking on links.
Then connect, knowing you're helping make the web safer for you
and for everyone. Make Stop, Think, Connect part of your daily online routine.
Hold your fire.
What?
We're playing online.
So?
You need to stop, think, connect.
Stop. Before you play, make sure your game safety settings are active.
Think about your online behavior and report any online bullying or harassment.
And never share personal information with anyone you don't know.
Then connect, knowing you're helping make the web safer for you
and for everyone. Make Stop, Think, Connect part of your daily online routine.
Guess what?
What?
Phones can be computers too.
So
you need to stop, think, connect.
Just like on your home computer, stop before you open attachments, click links, or download files.
Think about what you post and share with others.
And keep your login and passwords private and only use encrypted Wi-Fi spots.
Then connect, knowing you're helping make the web safer for you
and for everyone. Make Stop, Think, Connect part of your daily online routine.
All right, great. So some good messaging there even for our kids. Stop, think, connect. I think that's a wrap for today. Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Schwartz, for giving us insight into boiling frogs, just how that water temperature is heating up even though we might not realize it. Our next Lunch and Learn is February 10th, and that one will be at noon Missouri time. We'll have Dr. Randy Danielson and I think a couple of others, hopefully, discussing the Higher Learning Commission. So it'll be about accreditation and kind of the role of the Higher Learning Commission. A little less technical, but it should be very interesting. I really want to thank the ITS staff that make these Lunch and Learns possible. Corey Sanford, Dean Mogg, Barb Bevel, and Danny Flathammer are the technology people who contribute these offerings, and they are very interested in taking these skills to the next level, working with faculty and staff. So if you're interested, contact the help desk and they'd be glad to help you use some of these tools. And then also special thanks to Gene Varnold, who organizes and pulls together these sessions. It's really helpful. So I think that's it for now. We'll see you next time, and have a great rest of the week. Thanks again, Dr. Schwartz. Appreciate it.
Thank you.